You could make the argument that the word terrorism is the most powerful political weapon of our time. Our government has used the word terrorism to justify indiscriminately spying on Americans, suspending basic due process, and waging an interminable war that has cost over $4 trillion and 1.5 million lives. In theory, the word terrorism means the unlawful use of violence and intimidation, especially against civilians, in the pursuit of political aims. Okay, fair enough. The problem is that while that may be the technical definition, these days terrorism only seems to mean one thing: violence committed by Muslims against white people. Just look at the speed with which people call something terrorism as soon as the attacker is revealed to be Muslim.
Terror in Orlando.
Police and the FBI are investigating this massacre as a possible act of terrorism.
The FBI is taking the lead in the investigation because they're considering it a possible terrorist incident, in part because the suspect screamed Allahu Akbar.
This isn't about gun control or hate crimes. It has to be about taking the fight to the global jihadi movement.
The term terrorism is then used as a political weapon to justify extreme violence and repression against entire communities. And the proof is in our policies. Like, take Trump's speech about Afghanistan in August 2017 when he said the United States is going to send more troops.
Terrorists, take heed. America will never let up until you are dealt a lasting defeat.
We've been fighting this war in Afghanistan for 16 years now, well before Donald Trump became president. And it's been all in the name of fighting terrorism. Meanwhile, over 100,000 people have been killed in Afghanistan, including 31,000 civilians, with no end in sight. That's because how can you really deliver a lasting defeat to an idea like terrorism? The reality is, you can't. But it does have the convenient effect of justifying a never-ending war and feeding a voracious multi-billion-dollar military-industrial complex. And Afghanistan isn't alone. Fighting terrorism is used to justify U.S. bombing campaigns in 6 other Muslim-majority countries: Iraq, Syria, Pakistan, Yemen, Libya, and Somalia. We bomb those countries because we claim we want to fight terrorism, yet the more we bomb, the more terrorism we get. In the year 2000, there were 5,000 deaths from terrorism. By 2014, there were 30,000 deaths. And the term terrorism isn't just used to kill people abroad, it's also used to put Muslims under surveillance here at home. A 2014 investigation by The Intercept uncovered an NSA and FBI program to spy on Muslim leaders around the country in the name of fighting terrorism. This included a guy named Asim Ghafoor, a Washington-based attorney who worked for a Texas state representative.
I believe I was targeted because my name is Asim Abdurrahman Ghafoor. I'm from India, my parents are from India, and I travel to Saudi Arabia as a young man and I do the pilgrimage. Yes, absolutely. I believe that had something to do with it.
And that's the key. If the term terrorism is a political weapon, it's not going to be used against a bunch of white people in the United States. It's going to be used against Muslims. That's why guys like James Alex Fields or Dylan Roof aren't immediately labeled as terrorists. The whole point of labeling someone a terrorist rather than, say, a suspect, is that once someone becomes a terrorist, you can justify bending all the rules of habeas corpus and due process. And the reality is that our government isn't interested in doing that to a bunch of white people. Look, this isn't to say we should be expanding the term terrorism and all the horrible effects that entails to include white people. We should be expanding civil liberties and due process and habeas corpus to include everyone. And we should not be killing people abroad. Getting a clear understanding of what we mean when we say terrorism would be a good first step.